So I came across something that I thought was absolutely amazing that I would like to share with you. This is knowledge that I already have, and I'm sure many of you have, but to see it on paper is something entirely different. And I want to share these statistics with you because it's quite amazing. So this is a study out of Princeton. Congress literally doesn't care what you think. So I'm just going to read to you a bit of this and then I'm going to discuss it. Have you ever felt like the government doesn't really care what you think? Professors Martin Gillen's Princeton University and Benjamin Page Northwestern University looked at more than 20 years worth of data to answer a simple question. Does the government represent the people? That's a question that I'm sure many people are concerned about. Their study took data from nearly 2,000 public opinion surveys and compared it to the policies that ended up becoming law. In other words, they compared what the public wanted to what the government actually did. What they found was extremely unsettling. Check this out. The opinions of 90% of Americans have essentially no impact at all. What this essentially outlines is that we don't live in a democracy, which is something I already knew, but it's amazing once again to see it in print. Princeton University study public opinion has near zero impact on U.S. law. Gillen and Page found that the number of Americans for or against any idea has no impact on the likelihood that Congress will make it law. The preferences of the average American appear to have only a minuscule, near zero, statistically non-significant impact upon public policy. One thing that does have influence, you guessed it, money. While the opinions of the bottom 90% of income earners in America have statistically non-significant impact, economic elites, business interests, and people who can afford lobbyists still carry major influences. Nearly every issue we face is, as a nation, is caught in the grip of corruption. And this is a 10-year spending to U.S. influence government by industry. I'll pop this on the screen very quickly. From taxation to national debt, education to the economy, America is struggling to address our most serious issues. Moneyed interests get what they want, and the rest of us pay the price. They spend billions influencing America's government. We give them trillions in return. And this is absolutely amazing. In the last 5 years alone, the 200 most politically active companies in the U.S. spent $5.8 billion influencing our government with lobbying and campaign contributions. Those same companies got $4.4 trillion in taxpayer support. Look at that. That's absolutely astounding, earning a return of 750 times their investment. It's a vicious cycle of legalized corruption, and this is a quick graph of how much corruption has exploded over the years. As the cost of winning elections explode, politicians of both political parties become ever more dependent on the tiny slice of the population who can bankroll their campaigns. To win a Senate seat in 2014, candidates had to raise $14,251 every single day. Just 0.05% of Americans donate more than $10,000 in any election. My God. So it's perfectly clear who candidates will turn to first and who they're indebted to when they win. In return for campaign donations, elected officials pass laws that are good for their mega donors and bad for the rest of us. And these are just some quick little statistics that I would like to read off very quickly. 91% of the time, the candidate with the most money wins the election. 2/3 of political donations come from just 0.2% of Americans. Members of Congress spend 30 to 70% of their time simply fundraising. Shout out to Kirsten Cinema. This is absolutely astounding. Absolutely astounding. And that just, look, it gives you the reason why nothing good typically happens in this country on a large scale. Federal legislation, right? Like, progressive policies that lefties typically champion. Because the system is corrupt. The system is corrupt. And like I said, this isn't anything new. We knew this coming in before reading this, but it's amazing to see the numbers. In the last 5 years alone, the 200 most politically active companies in the U.S. spent $5.8 billion influencing our government. That's how much money they spent influencing our government. The amount of money they got from the taxpayers, i.e., me and you, $4.4 trillion. And it reminds me of that study from the Rand Corporation. It's this ever so prolonged fight between the 1% and the bottom 99% or 90%. The Rand Corporation did a study. $50 trillion has been robbed from the 90% by the 1%. And if the upward transfers of wealth had been how they were in the mid-1970s, then every American would be, in the bottom 90%, would be $1,144 richer every month. I mean, look, man, this just gives you the game. And if you don't think that money in politics, that corruption is an issue, I got news for you, man. You need to do some reevaluation because you're wrong. I think that corruption should be punished like the most heinous crimes that in this country, like rape, murder, terrorism, because you're killing people in many cases. Like in Kirsten Cinema, she's taking millions of dollars from the pharmaceutical industry, and she comes out against lower drug prices. Americans that can't afford their medicine die. You have blood on your hands. And where do all of our tax dollars typically go in many cases? Well, as we just pointed out, to the people that fund the government. But where does it also go? To war, to endless war, to fund the war machine, because that's also incredibly popular for another entity that plays a part in owning our government themselves, that being the military industrial complex. All right, my camera just died and I don't remember what I was exactly saying. But look, man, just look at the disparities. Look at how much they spend and how much they get in return. So what was it? 200 biggest companies spent $5.8 billion to lobby the politicians, and they get from the taxpayers $4.4 trillion. That's highway robbery. We're being robbed. These are crimes. People should be prosecuted over this nonsense, and this should piss literally everybody off because you're being robbed. We don't live in a democracy. This isn't a representative democracy by any stretch of the imagination. These fucking Democrats right now are parading around on CNN and all the news networks, talking about the January 6th insurrection thing and how it was an attack on our democracy. No, this is an attack on our democracy. The fact that both political parties are bought and owned by corporations and they do their bidding, so these corporations and CEOs and rich people that own them can continue to enrich themselves to the chagrin of the mass of people. That's the biggest problem that we're facing in these political fights that we undergo to fight for things like universal health care, free college, ending the wars, all these other things. We're combated by this huge swath of money that is anti what we want. And until we address that problem, we won't see us getting what we want. We won't see any progression. I won't say it's a needless fight, but it seems like it at times because the forces that we're up against are so huge and so strong, and they're backed by, every corporation you can fucking think of. The only thing I can think of that can combat this is civil unrest. Civil unrest and political unrest. We need to make these people scared of us. They're not frightened because they feel like they're comfy. They're in their, luxurious rooms. They bribe politicians, and it doesn't even take official statements. It's just a wink and a nod there. These things are often implied, and they get what they want done. There needs to be we need a new system. We need a new system, one that works for the people, one that the people run, and one that the people operate. And maybe under that kind of system, we can see the change that we so often ask for.